Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into a seriously dark but absolutely fascinating deep dive. We're looking at one of the most complex legacies in all of anime, Orochimaru's scientific experiments. We all remember him for the creepy snake jutsu and that crazy obsession with immortality, but if you actually stop and look at the sheer scale of his biological tampering, it tells a massive story about power and, honestly, the dark side of scientific progression in the ninja world. Okay, so let's dive into this. A recent discussion over on the Naruto subreddit hit the nail right on the head when it comes to the visceral, chilling reality of Orochimaru's work. See, the anime kind of watered down the true brutality of his hideouts, but the original manga, it showed these totally uncensored labs with chained-up test subjects. It immediately sets the stakes here. We're not just dealing with a rogue ninja, we're dealing with a mad scientist who is operating completely outside the bounds of human morality. And that brings us to this shocking number, 18. Based on a really careful look at the source material, 18 is the number of confirmed, successful human experiments that Orochimaru actually brought to fruition during the series. And honestly, that's not even counting the borderline ones or the total failures. That's 18 real individuals whose biology was completely ripped apart, altered, weaponized, or cloned, all just to feed his obsession with uncovering the ultimate truth. So let's move into our first major theme, the curse sealed subjects, or the foundation of his power. This is really where Orochimaru first started manipulating the power dynamics of the entire ninja world on a massive scale. Let's break down the actual science behind this, so we're all on the same page about how his early augmentations worked. Orochimaru obviously didn't invent nature energy, right? But he did figure out a way to hijack it. He studied a ninja named Yugo, whose clan had this unique genetic trait to passively absorb nature energy. Orochimaru basically isolated that trait and created the curse seal by injecting Yugo's blood directly into regular people. So he was essentially taking ordinary fighters who could never naturally use senjutsu or sage chakra and giving them this sudden, super violent ability to do exactly that. Now, what's really interesting here is how his science completely elevated the base combat skills of his lower-tier test subjects. Start with the purely physical stuff. He literally implanted hollow windpipes into Zaku's arms to blast air, and gave Dosu these crazy sound wave-generating gauntlets to attack the inner ear. But then, he scales it up biologically. He slaps the curse seal on the sound 4, giving them massive stat boosts. And for Sakon and Ukon, the curse seal amps up their unique bloodline abilities so much that they achieve molecular breakdown. They can literally merge with an opponent's body and dismantle them from the inside out. Wild, right? But here's the catch. The process was absolute agony and incredibly lethal. Just look at the statistic. 10%. That was the survival rate for his early curse seal testing. Out of 10 initial test subjects branded with the curse seal of heaven, Anko Mitarashi was the single solitary survivor. Think about what that means. 9 people died agonizing deaths just so Orochimaru could prove his prototype actually worked. Talk about absolute ruthlessness. That relentless drive for genetic modification naturally leads us into his next big obsession, mastering Kekkei Genkai and stealing bloodline traits. For a quick refresher, Kekkei Genkai are those incredibly rare, highly coveted genetic anomalies. You can't just train and learn them. You have to be born with them. Well, Orochimaru absolutely refused to accept that biological limitation. He went out of his way to abduct or manipulate specific individuals just to unlock their genetic secrets. I mean, he kept Sugetsu locked in a water tank to study the Hozuki clan's hydrification technique, and he took in Kimimaro specifically to study Shikotsu Myaku, that terrifying ability to weaponize his own skeletal structure. And if he couldn't recruit a trait, he just tried to manufacture it from scratch. The numbers here really quantify his madness perfectly. In his attempt to recreate the first Hokage's legendary wood release, Orochimaru experimented on 60 children. 60. And 59 of them died. Yamato is the one and only survivor, coming out the other side as the Leaf Village's only wood-style user in generations. It's just a horrifying statistic that really puts the immense human cost of his data collection into perspective. So let's track this massive leap in his scientific progression over the course of the whole story. You see, he starts early on with those crude, highly fatal wood-style tests. Then he refines things a bit, using the curse seal to stabilize Kimimara's terminal chakra disease. From there, he jumps straight into advanced genetics, mass-producing and hoarding Uchiha Sharingan eyes. And finally, all of this culminates in his absolute peak, engineering perfected synthetic life in the Boruto era. Step 3 on that timeline is just staggering to think about. Orochimaru found this test subject, Shin, whose unique biology instantly accepted literally any foreign genetic material. Zero rejection. So Orochimaru basically used Shin as a living petri dish to clone the super rare Mangekyo Sharingan, and this research directly fueled Danzo Shimura's terrifying arsenal. Orochimaru grafted Hashirama's cells along with 17 of these cloned eyes right onto Shin's severed arm, and then attached the whole shebang to Danzo. That single scientific breakthrough is exactly what enabled Danzo's terrifying mastery of the reality warping Izanagi technique. Let's move to the next section and see how all of this builds into the ultimate clones, the absolute pinnacle of his science in the modern Boruto era. Here we're comparing his two synthetic sons, who really represent the crowning achievement of his life's work. First, you have Log, who's a highly capable adult clone with advanced kenjutsu sword techniques and crazy armor manipulation. But then you have Mitsuki. Mitsuki is his ultimate triumph. He wasn't just engineered to use Orochimaru's old jutsu. He was built from the ground up to achieve perfected snake sage mode. This is a profound, mind-blowing level of nature mastery that Orochimaru himself, despite all his years of striving for power, could never actually achieve organically. Which brings us to a really crucial point. Orochimaru himself is, without a doubt, his own greatest experiment. Just look at his current ultimate form. He essentially hacked immortality by transferring his consciousness into a white Zetsu body, a body that has no will of its own and is made entirely of Hashirama cells, which casually grants him wood release. On top of that, he's absorbed the chakra and abilities of his own protege, Dragon Sage Kabuto. Literally over half a century of relentless, bloody scientific research is uploaded straight into the body he currently walks around in today. It's insane. All right, on to scaling the legendary Sannin, the power debate. With all of this intense biological hacking we've talked about, where does this mad scientist actually rank when put up against his legendary peers? Now, the community is hugely divided when comparing their feats, and for good reason. On one hand, Orochimaru is this immortal Kage killer who wields the massive reanimation jutsu, Edo Tensei. But then you have Jiraiya, who commands that incredibly powerful Toad Sage mode, huge area of effect attacks, and some of the most elite sealing jutsu in the verse. And of course, Tsunade. She utilizes the 100 healings jutsu, which basically gives her near unlimited chakra and this immense physical strength that can literally crack Madara's giant Susanoo avatar. So it's this constant, never-ending debate. Versatility versus raw destructive power versus unmatched durability. And this brilliantly illustrates how we perhaps should be looking at it. As one user pointed out on a power scaling forum, trying to strictly rank them kind of misses the author's whole intent. The Sannin are explicitly designed to operate on a rock-paper-scissors dynamic, which ties directly into their animal summons, the snake, the toad, and the slug. It's not a vertical ladder where one is definitively on top. It's a cyclical balance. Matchup advantages and specific counters matter way more than just comparing their base stats. Which brings us to our final section, a questionable redemption and his moral legacy. Power scaling aside, we really have to bring this explainer full circle to look at the incredibly unsettling moral implications of his ultimate fate in the series. Because despite everything we've just covered, the chained prisoners, the brutal 10% survival rates, the tragic deaths of 59 innocent children, Orochimaru basically walks free in the modern era. Why? Well, it all comes down to his actions during the Fourth Great Ninja War. He used his perfected Edo Tensei to revive the 4 previous Hokage, he assisted the current 5 Kaji, and he essentially provided the massive tactical support they needed to literally save the world. Ultimately, the governments of the shinobi world decided his unparalleled scientific mind was simply too valuable an asset to lock away or execute, and that led to his highly, highly controversial pardon. Which leaves us with this final, really provocative question to consider. Yes, his scientific breakthroughs undeniably played a huge part in saving the world from total annihilation, for sure. But does that utility truly absolve him of the horrific, completely inhuman crimes he committed in the dark corners of his lab for decades? Can a genius intellect and late-stage help ever truly outweigh a total lack of humanity? It's a deeply complex legacy and one the Naruto universe is still actively wrestling with today. So what do you think? Let that sit with you for a bit. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.